to turn it over to Alexis Goldstein in just a minute, but we have the unique pleasure this morning of hearing from some pretty special people who attended Corinthian colleges and a couple other for-profit institutions who are here to tell their story about what they experienced. And Alexis is going to talk a little bit about why it's so important for us as Democrats and us as a caucus to pay close attention to what they experienced and to also pay attention to what's happening now at the Department of Education as we move forward to make sure this doesn't happen again. So without further ado, Alexis Goldstein from the Debt Collective.
So good morning, thanks for coming. Thank you, Josh and Bryce and Sarah and James and everyone else who helped arrange this. And thank you all for coming this morning. And thank you, of course, to Senator Durbin, Warren, and Blumenthal for organizing this for us. So I don't want to take up too much time because I'm definitely the least important person that you need to hear from this morning. But Josh just asked me to give some background and context. As I'm sure all of you know, the crisis of Corinthian College is just one piece of the larger crisis of the for-profit college situation that continues to deteriorate in this country and causes hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of students to be buried in debt that they cannot repay for degrees that do not allow them to get any kind of meaningful work in the fields that they study. Corinthian was under investigation by dozens of state attorneys general prior to their closure and then bankruptcy last year. The National Consumer Law Center actually has an excellent petition that can set out an entire timeline of all of the different law enforcement investigations into the school, which I can make available to anyone who hasn't seen it previously. I just want to say before I forget that I do have a sign-in sheet, so anyone who wants that or any other materials, I'd love to just get folks' contact information. I'm happy to send it around after. Corinthian essentially got about $1 billion every year in federal student loan money up until its collapse. And they were an institution that was charged with everything from predatory lending to violations of, they would use military logos in their advertising, misrepresentations, talking about job placements that were at Taco Bell and saying that that was a person in the accounting field. But these are problems that were endemic across the entire Corinthian chain. So the Department of Education has done 2 enforcement actions to date against Corinthian colleges, one against the Heald School and one against Everest. The Heald enforcement action affected, they estimate, between 40 and 50,000 individuals, and the more recent Everest enforcement action affects an estimated 85,000. But again, I just want to stress that the conduct that was found in these enforcement actions was endemic across the entire chain, and in fact is found at many other for-profit schools. And you'll hear today from a number of former students from some of these for-profit schools, and they'll be able to speak to their experiences. But I just want to talk about the 2 responses, both of which that have been wildly inadequate by the Department of Education to try to address this. The first was the Borrower Defense Special Master process. Joseph A. Smith, who was the monitor of the National Mortgage Settlement, is the Borrower Defense Special Master for the Department of Education, and he is tasked with essentially making recommendations to the department as to what they should do for debt cancellation. So since, I believe 1994 is when the regulations were, since 1976? Well, for decades there has been a law in the books called Defense to Repayment, which essentially allows a borrower that was defrauded, whose school violated state law, to assert what's known as a defense to repayment. But essentially they're allowed to apply to the Department of Education and say, here are the ways the school broke the law and my debt was canceled. So Joseph Smith is in charge of making a recommendation for the thousands of applications of defense to repayment that they have received. Now, the Debt Collective, who you're about to hear from, are largely responsible for, I would say, at least half, if not more than half, of the defense to repayment applications that the Department of Education has received. Joseph Smith has done 2 reports to date. He has a 3rd one coming up. In the 2nd report, he noted that there were a little less than 7,000 defense to repayment applications received. 3,000 of those came from Heald. I believe 1,000 of them came from, 1,700 came from Everest, about 1,000 from Art Institute, and several hundred from ITT Tech. Separate from that, 7,200 applications were submitted by the Massachusetts Attorney General that was not included in the last report. So the Debt Collective built a web app that allowed people to create this application and inserted the relevant state law language depending on what state they were in. So the department was flooded with these applications. Joseph Smith is essentially in charge of saying whose application is approved and whose isn't. But to date, the only group of former students who have received any relief are those who attended HEALD and who were affected by the HEALD department enforcement action. And of the approximately 50,000 folks who were estimated to be included in that, because the department has ignored calls from senators, from members of the House, from the state attorneys general to do a group process and say, well, if you've done this enforcement action, if you have this evidence that there was this wrongdoing, why don't you just take all those 50,000 students and affirmatively cancel their debt, or at least ask them to opt out of debt cancellation. They are instead asking people to essentially fill out an attestation form stating that they went to the school and mail it in. And so thus far, 1,312 former Field students have gotten debt cancellation of the 50,000 estimated to be eligible. And I believe there are about 1,000 to 2,000 they have not made a decision. And again, this is just HEALD. So everyone else still has their debt. You'll hear from some of them today. Anyone went to Amherst, anyone went to biotech. And we're not sure what's next for the special master. So that's the first thing the department has been doing. The second thing is right now there is a negotiated rulemaking happening, borrower defense NAGREG. There's a session today, there's a session tomorrow. I would actually especially encourage folks to go tomorrow if you have the time, because there's a sociologist called Tressie McMillan Cotton who's studied this and made this her work and has a forthcoming book particularly about for-profit schools and the populations that they serve, and she'll be testifying tomorrow at the NAGREG. So we were hopeful that this would clarify defense to repayment and expand it. Some advocates have been pushing, for example, for an expansion of false certification discharges. What we have seen from the department thus far is the exact opposite. It seems that they're trying to narrow. So it's almost as if the door has been opened a little crack and they're trying to shut it the rest of the way closed and ensure that no one else can apply for debt cancellation. And then before I go on any further, we have Buchanan from the Debt Collective at Ann Bowers, who's actually a negotiator on the NAGREG with us today, and I'd love to invite them up to just talk about a handful of the problems that we've seen with the department's current proposal.
Hi everybody, thanks for being here. So I just want to start with a little bit of context for the negotiated rulemaking, which is that the department announced that they were going to do a negotiated rulemaking. They opened it up for comment, and they got over 200 comments, almost all of which were from for-profit college students, describing their stories, encouraging them to put together a generous process that was based on a group-based process that provided automatic discharge to classes of people who were affected by the same conduct at the same school in the same period of time. They heard it over and over again from attorneys general, from senators, et cetera, the advocates that are on the committee submitted detailed proposals for how that could actually work based on current regulations. I have actually been part of the group of attorneys that have been doing all the legal research and making sure that you can line up all these regulations to make this process work. We think that you can do it. In fact, after the first negotiated rulemaking session, where all the negotiators seemed quite clear that they wanted to put together a process that was actually generous to borrowers and accessible. We put together a process that we thought reflected those concerns. We proposed it to the Department of Education. I'm happy to provide that to anybody who is interested. We did the same thing for false certification. We did the same thing for post-school discharge. So what we assumed is that the Department of Education was starting to hear these. They had heard enough. They had heard hundreds and hundreds of borrowers provide their story. They had heard, experts in the field who have dealt with borrowers over and over again describe the importance of a group-based process. And frankly, given that context, what they came back with, what they proposed with this current session, is insulting. And as Ann put it to me yesterday, it's like a spit in the face. It's like we weren't even there at the first session. It's like borrowers didn't even submit comments to the proposed rulemaking. So I'm happy to talk in more detail about all the things that are wrong with the proposal, but at the highest level, the bottom line is that they're basically putting in a whole bunch of provisions that make it really, really hard for a borrower to submit a claim. So first of all, the substantive standard under which a claim will be judged is currently under state law, which has a number of problems, but the advantage of state law is that there are some states that have really developed consumer protection laws and that are focused on these schools. And that's something that the Department of Education can draw on for substantive standards for how to deal with complicated situations. And so what they've done instead is said we're not going to pay attention to state law at all. We're only going to focus on breaches of contract and misrepresentations. Now, misrepresentation is a good thing to focus on, but it's not everything, right? A misrepresentation, pressure tactics are not misrepresentations, right? Being called multiple times a day, being rushed through the application process, being told that you have to enroll right away, even if that's, technically true, is not a misrepresentation. And there's a whole number of other things that these schools do that aren't misrepresentations. They look for people's pressure points. They break them down emotionally in order to convince them to enroll. Again, not a misrepresentation. And the real issue with the misrepresentation reg is, as the department admitted yesterday, they have never enforced it. They have no idea how to enforce it. They say it provides certainty, but they've never done anything with it, and certainly not when dealing with borrower claims. The other issue is that there's a 2-year statute of limitations on claims. Now, I'll remind you that federal student loans do not have any statute of limitations on them, and these are supposed to be defenses. So anytime that somebody, generally the rule is anytime somebody can collect on a debt, you can assert a defense to a debt, right? The statute of limitations go hand in hand. What they're saying is, no, you have 2 years basically after you should have discovered, whatever that means, that there was some wrongdoing to assert your claim. And as you'll hear from folks, that is just patently ridiculous. People don't realize that they've been wronged often for years. They don't, they know what happened was wrong or, confusing or, hurtful, but they don't know that it's illegal. They don't know that they can assert a claim. They don't know that the Department of Education has a form on their website, which, by the way, in fact, they don't currently. So suddenly borrowers are going to pay attention to the fact that this rulemaking happened. Anyway. And then there's a process element, which is that the Department of Education, I'll just say this briefly, they say they're doing a group-based process, and a group-based process really makes the most sense since these are policies and practices that happen in individual schools. But the group-based process, as we just heard from the department this morning, requires any complaint to name individually all borrowers who are submitting a claim. And that's not a grouping, that's an individual process, right? That's just individuals saying we're going to submit this at the same time. That's not a process that says there was wrongdoing at the school, and the Department of Education can figure out, based on its own records, who was wronged. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anne for her thoughts on the friendship.
Good morning, everyone. My thoughts on the negotiated rulemaking are not positive thoughts this time. I kind of had a little bit of hope when I found out the students were going to be represented in these negotiations. And I feel that they're not taking us seriously. They felt it was a waste of time having students come in and talk yesterday. And honestly, I'm just totally disappointed in them. And this time I'm turning it over to the students so they have time to say their stories. Thank you.
My name is Amy Schneider. I went to the Illinois Institute of Art in Schaumburg, Illinois. So Victor was actually my state senator, which is awesome. So while I was going through recruitment, I was shown falsified placement statistics. The school actually boasted over 90% placement statistics for the whole school, and my particular program was at like 96%, which is not even heard of at reputable, really good college. It's not a realistic placement statistic. But at that time, I didn't know that. I was first generation college student. My parents had no idea about the process. I never had any inclination to doubt the education system. You're taught from a young age that you go to college, you do the best thing you can do, and you do your best and you make it, and education is there to give you a better life. And if you work hard and go to school and get good grades, you'll get a good job and a good career. And you basically have a life and not have to worry about debt and how you're going to pay your bills. So I showed the falsified placement statistic grades, and then I was also told that they had connections to the industry. So they were telling me that post-graduation I would be able to meet all these employers and they would be at our portfolio show. That didn't happen when I actually did graduate. I graduated with honors, but no one showed up for my particular program at our portfolio show. Not a single employer showed up. And the whole thing was really just a lie. I mean, the whole first year that you're going there, you're doing fundamentals courses. So you don't really realize at that time that it's a scam. So you're going a whole year before you start to realize that something is amiss, because you're going through just very, like, what seemed to me to be normal courses. Like, this is, you know, a color theory class. Well, to me that made sense because it's college level color theory class, so it made sense to have fundamentals. But once I got into the core classes, I started to realize that each class was basically the same class, just repeated. I had teachers that didn't show up. I had teachers that, if we had 8 a.m. class, they would decide not to start class until an hour later because it's the morning and people are ready to learn in the morning. So that was completely ridiculous. I was told also that they had night and weekend classes, which was a big selling point for me because I was working full time and I wanted to continue to work so that I would not have to struggle through school. When you're actually going through and choosing your classes though, they tell you that the class isn't going to be offered again for maybe 6 months, and they can't even guarantee the next time it's offered is going to be at night or on a weekend. So they basically force you to take this class during the day. So I dropped down from full-time work to part-time work. I ended up getting pregnant my last year of college, and I tried to work with that, and I would have doctor's notes, and my teacher was marking me down, even though I had doctor's notes, that I was pregnant. And he wasn't even showing up to class, so I was like, this is really hypocritical. You're not even showing up to teach us. We have substitutes all the time, and I'm getting marked down for going to the doctor and taking care of my health. And then at my portfolio show, my student advisor actually came up to me and made me sign a document saying that because of the timing of my birth, the school would not help me with job placement. And the way that she phrased it was, you need to sign this before you go and walk for graduation. So there's just a lot of lies, and when we signed, we didn't have any idea what a FFELP loan was. Our actual paperwork, I looked at my promissory note, and I tried to see, like, if there was any indication that there was some sort of hybrid loan in there, and there was not. I mean, it says William D. Ford Direct, which when you're a borrower, you have no idea what these loans are. I mean, that sounds like a direct loan to me, not this hybrid loan that the department is now trying to say does not qualify for, you know, debt cancellation. The other thing is, my loans are around $30,000. My mom has plus loans, about $78,000, and she during recruitment, I very clearly remember her telling them that she could not afford that. Her debt to income ratio was not, it's not something she could manage. And they assured us that we would have grants and all of this financial assistance, and the grants were such a small fraction of what the actual tuition was that it was a joke to even get financial aid. And then, I mean, I had no idea to even check my ledger or my transcripts or anything and compare them, which I actually did last year. I mean, this is 5 years after I graduated, which is another reason the statute of limitations is a joke. So I was looking through mine and my mom's financial ledger, comparing it to my transcript, and we found overcharges that we allegedly received stipends for that we never got money back for, and the school has no proof that we ever signed for this or cashed these checks. They won't provide proof for that. And then I also found a Illinois MAP grant, which they've taken away funding. Bruce Rauner took away funding for the Illinois MAP grant. And I saw that they took one of those grants out like 6 months after I graduated and allegedly refunded it to me. So, I mean, there's a massive amount of fraud, and we have documentation of it, and it's like we submitted our defenses, and the department is still ignoring us and not listening to anything we say. So, that's the story.
is Pamela Hunt. I'm from Connecticut. I graduated from Everest University Online in 2009 with a master's in criminal justice. I have over $172,000 in student loan debt. I've never worked in my field. I'm actually a patient care assistant at the moment with the hourly rate of pay less than $15 an hour. And according to the Higher Education Act of 1965, for the defense to repayment, legally I'm eligible to have my loans discharged based on acts of fraud, omission, just by the very definition of the act. However, it's not happening. I mean, you know, predatory lending and all types of allegations that have been proven, but yet still my loans aren't discharged. And I found out afterwards that the Department of Education was investigating Everest Online, or Everest and Corinthian, prior to me even enrolling in the school, but yet they never made that information available to any of us, because had they done that, we wouldn't have enrolled in a school that is under investigation for the, you know, the very agency that is giving them the student loan money. And although they were under investigation, the Department of Education continued to fund them with student loans on our behalf. And so now, you know, we have this enormous debt to pay back, and we didn't get the education that we were supposed to. My job placement department sent me internet links for jobs. That was their idea of job placement. Yahoo.com, Indeed.com, GetHired.com, USAJobs.com. That was what they sent to me when I requested job placement information and help that was promised to me when I was a student. And these schools are very predatory, they're racist, they prey on the majority of Black, low-income American citizens. The mainstream school had an increase of Black American college students that graduated of 24%. For-profit colleges, 264%. So that in and of itself lets you know that this is a strategic plan of theirs to target low income, single parents, African Americans, and they end up with twice the debt of their mainstream counterpart graduates. And, you know, I just think that if you're gonna make a rule or a law, and we have shown that that was violated and that we're eligible for the discharge, I mean, I don't understand why we have to go through all the rigmarole, jump through hoops. I mean, they want to make it an individual process. However, the schools didn't make it an individual process when they were, you know, practicing their predatory tactics. They went for the masses. And so therefore, I believe that the same way that they stalked and lied to us to get us to enroll and put us in this enormous debt is the same way that the Department of Education should forgive our loans. And that's my story. I do want to add one other thing. And, you know, a lot of our stories we tell, and then people want to know how it impacts us as a regular human being. With that type of debt, there's so many things that happen to you in your everyday life. My situation, I was living in a home that was for 10 years. I was renting a home for 10 years, and I have like 5, 6 kids, and one of them is severely disabled. So the home was set up where, you know, he's wheelchair bound, so it had a ramp, and you know, everything inside was handicap accessible. And I had been there 10 years, and the landlord, you know, the house got foreclosed on the landlord, so you know, they told me I had to leave. But then they gave me the option to get a mortgage to buy the property. I had been there 10 years. They said, okay, we'll give you first choice. If you want to stay here, get a mortgage and, you know, you can live here. So I went and tried to get a mortgage. The mortgage broker told me, he said, well, your educational debt is really messing you up. He said, because your debt to income ratio is not going to allow you to get this mortgage. And I told him, I said, well, I'm on the income-based payment program, and, you know, I have the forbearance by the Department of Education because there's some issues going on. And he told me, he goes, yes, that may very well be the case. However, it goes without saying that within a 30-year mortgage, this loan will become due and payable at some point. And once it does, based on your income today, you will not be able to afford to pay your mortgage and to pay back your student loan. And because of that, I have to deny you the mortgage. And once he did that, me and my family became homeless. This was in October of last year. And you know, we've just recently found a place to live, but in that interim, we were hotel hopping, me and my kids and my disabled son with all his medical equipment, and you know, we were forced to live from hotel to hotel because of a for-profit college that put me in a position where I couldn't even afford to, you know, take care of my family. So it's really doing some damage. It's not just a bunch of us up here saying they suck, they gave us a shoddy education, and so now we're not going to pay. It was just bogus all the way across the board, and now it's coming back to bite all of us in our butts, and we're living like real crazy. La vida loca. So, but yeah, that's my story. Thank you.
I'll go next. Hi everyone. My name is Dawn, Dawn Lewick. I kind of have a unique situation. I'm a former employee of ITT Tech, also Corinthian College. I was an emancipated minor, and I luckily got a job at 18 working at the front desk of ITT Tech, and so I started with them when I was really young, and went to school with them. I also went to school at University of Phoenix. I promoted quickly throughout ITT Tech. In my 10 years, I was at 5 different campuses. I worked in the corporate office. I was in recruitment, financial administrator, until I promoted to director of finance. And then I was recruited in 2009 to work for Field College, where I was a corporate finance manager, managing all 12 campuses and probably over 17,000 student records. I also have student debt. I have about $117,000 in student loans. So even as an employee, even as a financial aid administrator, coming from low income, coming into a school with a GED and not knowing any better, those were the only options that I had, and that many of the people that you're going to hear from today, that's all we knew, that's all we had. One thing that I would like to say for you guys to consider as you guys listen to these stories, financial aid is based on your need. It's based on your need for aid to go to school. It is not based on your ability to repay. So when you apply for financial aid, you qualify and you receive funds because you meet certain criteria. One of that is that within your income and, you know, all the different aspects. But what other lending program do you know of that you qualify for and are guaranteed funds based on your need? It's not like buying a car, it's not like buying a house. Now, when I, as a financial administrator, sat down and in the enrollment process met with students, it was me that was telling them and reassuring them, no, the loan repayment programs are affordable. You know, giving them the entrance counseling, you know, drafted by the Department of Education that has misleading language that says that, you know, minimum payments, $50 a month, and then you have recruitment, you know, supporting this. No, you're going to get the job because we have 90% placement rates. So the school and the government's telling us as the students, hey, take out these loans, go to school, get your education, follow your dream, because you're going to be able to pay back. I don't know one one person that sat down in my office saying, I need all this money because I'm really, really, really sure I'm going to be able to pay you back. No, they sat down, they're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this back. How can I take out that much money? And it was me on the other side of the desk saying, oh, no, 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 no. That's why we have these programs. That's how people get through school. So just consider that when we're talking about the crisis that we have here. I have a lot to say, and I'm not going to take up a lot of time, so I'm going to try to just kind of bullet point. Yesterday was so disappointing. It was so disappointing. I don't remember the last time I was so frustrated and disappointed. Meeting with the BDSM was not even just a waste of my...
Can you just clarify who that is?
Joe Smith.
Joseph Smith, the special master, student loan special master. You know, nice guy, bless his heart. You know, he tried to choke out a couple church tears and show that he was really sympathetic. But at the end of the meeting, it just sounded like he was sick and tired of hearing the same rhetoric, the same stories. You know, he reassured us that he's read tons and tons of applications. So it almost sounds like he's had enough. Okay. So that in itself was really disappointing. But the other thing that was really disappointing was visibly seeing how much he did not know about this process that he's overseeing, how much he had to defer to others to answer questions for him. So he's giving recommendations to the Department of Education, but what does he really understand and know? You know, we have students here, and with the 2-year, what is the word for it?
Limitation.
Statute of limitation. That is just absolutely absurd. When you leave college, first and foremost, financial aid gives you your first 6 months before you have to repay to get out of school and figure out what you're going to do with your life. So they think in 2 years, all of a sudden, you're going to come up with this grand idea that I've been defrauded. Like Luke already pointed to and mentioned, that's not where your head's going. The way that these schools get you in is they first start off by what we call finding your hot buttons, finding your vulnerabilities, finding your weaknesses, pointing out to you the things in your life that are not going right, pointing to how this education is supposed to make it go right. But when you get out of school with a useless degree and you're trying to make use of that, you're not in the mode of like, oh, let me think about this. I was defrauded, and like somebody already said, I think it was Luke. We don't know the legal language. We don't know legal rights like many people, like other people do. So that 2 years, that just does not make sense. That does not seem reasonable for people to all of a sudden come up with this idea that I've been defrauded, okay? As somebody that comes from low income and stuff like that, that's where my mind goes. My mind usually goes to, what did I do to myself? What mistake did I make? Why am I in so much debt? It's this perpetual cycle of shame. That is exactly used to get students into school. So where along the lines are you supposed to stop and just think, well, they did me wrong, you know, I gotta go after them. That's not usually how we approach things. So the statute of limitation, that is such a huge concern. I just don't see how that would possibly even work. In all of this that I've witnessed over the last year, now mind you, being with ITT Tech since 1999, I was part of investigations that they were under. I've seen how these schools have extremely strong legal teams and strategists and board of directors that really, really are powerful masterminds that get together and they bring these schools through the mess, through their shitstorm, and bring them out squeaky clean. We saw that with EDMC when they took weak settlements from the Department of Education negotiated with, where they ended up not having to admit fault. Although we all know that they're committing fraud day in, day out. It is built into their business practice. As of right now, I believe that these students and these borrowers will never see the grace given to these schools and will be left on the hook. These companies get far more grace and assistance in negotiating and trying to get out of a messy situation than any one of us borrowers will ever receive. I would even say the accreditors. I mean, I have a lot to say about a lot of things. The Department of Ed, the accreditation, they, I think, are even getting off the hook. Not one of these players, whether they were an executive, a board member, accrediting agency, okay, none of them will ever face the hardship that these borrowers are facing, and I will end there.
Hi everyone, my name is Anissa. I went to Webster University Online, Orlando, South Florida, and I of struggle. I am the face. You look at this face, I am the face of struggle. We all are. My life, it's a little meal right now. Like, it's like I'm dreaming and I just can't wake up. And it's sad because I know some of you guys from last year. We've been out in the different room, and you know, we're still in the same predicament now. And we were just here last year, and it's sad. I should be home enjoying life. You know what I mean? My debt's clear, taking care of my son, but you know, I'm still here fighting for everyone. But it's like everyone said, Everest is a scam. Everybody know it is. I mean, I'm really beyond frustrated, and it's coming to the point where I don't know what to do anymore. Like I feel stuck. I mean, I'm broke. I don't have anything. I don't even have a savings account. Like this debt has really took a toll on me. And my life before going to Everest was okay, but now that I have all this debt, I'm worse. Like, I am struggling. And I told myself I wasn't going to break down, but you know, I have to try to that look at you every day that depends on you and you can't do nothing. Yeah, I mean, I have so much guilt because my child, I have to look at him every day and we are struggling. We have nothing. I live in the ghetto. I'm going to be serious. I live in the ghetto. And I tried to get out of there because, you know, I mean, my credit, ever since this happened, my credit is, I'll be real. My credit is 430. 430. You know what I mean? So I go to apartments and try to find apartments and I can't apply because my credit is application denied. So guess where I'm stuck at? I'm still stuck in the ghetto, in the hood. Like, it's so embarrassing. And I tried my best. I tried. So I went to college. I took out this money, and I'm just so, I'm on the verge of having a nervous breakdown. You do not understand. But I'm trying to be strong for my son because he needs me. He needs me, you know what I mean? But every day I look at him and I feel so guilty because he can't have the things that he needs because I can afford it. I can't give it to him. And then to sit there in front of people yesterday with their 6 figures and they're living life happy. And we're sitting here broke, struggling. We have absolutely nothing. They don't care. They do not care. The Department of Education does not, they don't care. It is what it is. They don't care. And I am beyond frustrated. I am frustrated. And it's like I don't know what else to say. I don't cry much, you know, I'm a very strong person. But after hearing everything that happened yesterday, and now we're going to try to beat around the bush with the whole 2-year thing, I'm just like, and then for me to sit in this room with Joe Smith and all he can talk about is himself, after we sit here teary-eyed, crying, practically begging for him to discharge, to help us or something. And now you can sit here and tell me how fortunate you were that you didn't have to go into debt because you had, you know what I mean? That was embarrassing. So what did I do? I turned around. I turned my back because there was absolutely nothing else to say. Because it was like, you're not going to help us. And he made it clear. So where are we at now? Where are we now?
Same place we were a year ago,
Same place we were.
if not worse.
Yeah. So take that into consideration. Take that back to your senator or whatever, your bosses. We struggle. And I feel it. And it's all I can say.
My name is Mackenzie Vasquez. I attended the San Jose Everest campus. I was 19 when I went. Little background, I come from a family who, my father has a GED and my mother has a high school diploma. So none of my family has ever been to college. So the language is very, very confusing. I was very pressured by my dad to go to college because he said, don't be like me, go to college, get a degree, get a good job, so that you don't start. And I had saw a commercial for Everest, and it was very like raving. 9 months, that's all it takes for, I went for medical assisting. 9 months, we work with your schedule, you can still go to work, you can still come here. So I called. I got a call back immediately after, wanting to schedule a viewing of the campus. So I headed to San Jose. This is a commute from Santa Cruz, so it's about 30 minutes. I was instantly put into a cubicle with a lady who then sat me down and asked me why I wanted to go to school. I told her all my dreams and how I wanted to be able to provide for myself. And she basically did a lot of very, very pinpointed me, told me like, you know, you could have a better job, a better life, pulled out a bunch of papers and showed me all this money I could be making. Look at what our students are making, look at our graduate rate. This could be you in 9 months. So I asked very simply, okay, well I can do this, but I need to know that I will get financial aid in order to be able to commute every day and to cut back a little bit on work in order to work with the schedule. She promised me up and down, don't worry, you're gonna get that, don't worry. So me being like, okay, here we go, like I'm gonna do something, you know, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna get a degree. She pushed me through the paperwork right then and there. I mean, she just put it out, she said, don't worry, just sign here, oh, this is just about our classes, here, this is very just sign, put me on a computer, oh, I just need you to initial right there, I click, 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 she had her hand on the mouse more than I had my hand on it. And I was signed up. A week later, I come in for my classes, and I'm going through my classes, and I'm kind of like, okay, this is odd. This is definitely not what I thought. I never got a viewing of the school that day. Let's just make that clear. So about a couple months in, I am very confused. I have not yet got a financial aid check. I really have no idea what's going on. I get pulled into one of the offices where they tell me that something had gone wrong with one of my private loans, but they told me, don't worry, we fixed it for you. We already signed, we just need you to initial here. So I got put into a Genesis loan without my consent. I had no idea what the interest rate was. I had no idea how much money I even took out. I had no idea what I was doing. But me not knowing, because again, I come from a family like a lot of other people, and I'm young, and language is very confusing for me. I was like, okay, like this must be okay. It's a school, it's education, right? This is what everybody does. About the next month, I start to get pulled into the office to be told that I will need to pay $50 a month for a TFC payment. I still to this day have no idea what that payment was. I told them that I was already struggling, and I told them I hadn't received the money. The lady told me, oh, that money paid for your books. That's how it was supposed to help you. I was told that if I don't pay this payment every month, that I will not be allowed to come back to class. I eventually got to the point where I went from having savings to nothing to the school. I got to the point where I literally was surviving off of food from my work. Free food from my work. I then told the lady, the financial counselor, that I can't afford to pay this. I told her how I barely had gas to get there, and that I had no food and no money. And they told me that I needed to get my priorities straight. That it was my fault. So she then walked out on me and told me she didn't have time. During this time of learning, I was learning how to draw blood from a student who had been there for maybe 2 months. I mean, there was times the teacher wasn't there. There was times where we were just sat on a computer to sit there for 6 hours on Microsoft Word doing nothing. This was not. I didn't pay $30,000 to do this. This is not what a real education is. And then eventually it got to the point where I could not pay that $50 fee. I still continued to go to class, although I wasn't paying. I got pulled out one day. They told me that you cannot come to class anymore, and we have already unrolled you about a week ago. So I never got to go. And now I am 22. I've got $30,000 in debt. I have no degree. And I'm not being helped, and I didn't do anything wrong. And it took me over this 2 years. This 2-year limit is ridiculous. It took me 2 years to figure out that what happened to me was wrong, because the whole time I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what this is. But it took me 2 years to figure that out. And you're gonna tell me you're gonna give me 2-year limit? It's not right. Took them over 7 years to investigate them, but you want me to get everything in 2 years? This is wrong. I can't get a car. I was homeless for 3 months to find somewhere because of my credit. I can't even have a cell phone in my name. And now I can't even go to school. Like, I'm watching all my friends graduate and have real jobs, and I'm sitting here super embarrassed. It's not right. And I pressure you guys to bring back our stories. This isn't just me. I was in school with multiple people. I was in school where I and one other girl were the only women who did not have kids at this school. The only, in this whole school. I went to a class full of Latinos and African Americans and 3 other white people. And you're gonna tell me that this is a predatory lending. But that's it. I don't know what else to say.
So I want to take a note very quickly before Paul speaks to say that we have very little time in this space, another maybe 15 minutes. So we want to open it up for Q&A or any comments or responses. Certainly, I'm sure some of you have heard these stories before. They've been in the media quite a bit. So, Paul, I think that it's important that you speak, but I also would encourage people to sort of very quickly gather themselves.
Okay, my name is Paul Yates. I attended Everett University Online. I had been in public service for my 30 years, including Texas Army National Guard, Texas State Guard, and Texas Bureau of Corrections. My whole adult life, looking out for others, protecting others at all costs. When I saw Everett University Online, commercial online, I thought, I promise you, all I had to make that call and change my life. Well, I made the call and made it worse. When I started Everett, I thought the children present, I had my 2 older children signed up also, and they both took advantage of also. They lied about many things, from the price, the time they took to complete the course, without even the proper equipment to complete the course. They also stated my hearing impairment problem wouldn't be an issue when I graduated, which it is. The Department of Education should have protected us from these predatory. As a public servant, I'm appalled that the Department of Education is still dragging its feet, lining their pockets with our hard work and money. We deserve to have all these predatory loans dismissed. The school in question was closed and sold off. Have we fined by our Department of Education for violating numerous state laws? Several members of Congress backed this up, along with 9 attorney generals. The Department of Education is still dragging their feet, trying to get the last few dollars from the victims they created. I will fight with this other strikers until justice is done. I shouldn't have to fight for something so obvious. So please do what's right and discharge the predatory loans. Thank you.
And I just wanted everybody to know that some of us did graduate, some of us did graduate, but it doesn't matter, our degrees are worthless because the schools are not regionally accredited. They tell us that they are, but they're not. They have a national accreditation, and so in our different states where we live, my degree is worthless, even though I have one, because they don't accept my degree. It's not accredited where I live, and for some people who say, well, I'll just transfer my credits to a different college and, maybe start over, they're not even transferable credits. So we need for you to take that into account as well.
Okay, are there any questions? Sorry, anyone have a question?
I'm curious to hear more about how the meeting with Joseph Smith went yesterday. We talked about it a little bit.
Joseph Smith essentially said that they were going to create a highly individualized, very burdensome process for folks to try to get through, and that was the news. He seemed.
Can you speak up?
Oh, I'm sorry. Joseph Smith has introduced an individualized process. There will not be group-based processes as far as we know. It's very unclear. He listened to the stories again. He expressed concern, genuine concern.
One of the things he said, can I just jump to say one thing? Sure. One of the things he said is we've been arguing for a group-based, class-based discharge process, and he said, how would I even know what a class is? So we find it's this inability to understand this as a systemic problem that happened to thousands of people, and that was a predatory lending scheme. It seems like his brain doesn't quite grasp that fundamental concept.
And can I say something? I don't think that Joseph Smith actually even grasped the concept of what he could do. He didn't seem to care that the DOE was just as culpable. I mean, had the DOE done its job, my understanding as a student was the DOE was there to protect me from predatory lenders and from having anything I said or to me had to be true. Going in, I was 59 years old. They had been, I went in 2005, and they had already been investigating Corinthian before I went in. So, but the DOE, why didn't the DOE stop sending them money? Common sense says to me, with my minimum accounting background, only at a bookkeeper level, if somebody's not doing something right, okay, and you've proved it beyond the shadow of doubt, don't give them money. That's stupid. That's it. I just get too carried away.
I don't think Joseph Smith doesn't know what he can do and doesn't understand the law. He knows quite clearly, and he was hired to do this, right? This is what he did in the National Mortgage Settlement, and this is what he was hired to do. And I think the same thing goes for the Department of Education. They claim to think California law provides something about reliance. We have a California Attorney General there saying that's not what the law says. And then, well, okay, I guess we better find another portion of the law that we can look to that will help us on that relief. I don't think it's some great mystery that they're having trouble finding out. We've done all the legal research for them. We put it right in their laps, right? That's not what the issue is. They don't want to do it.
I did want to say briefly, I know a lot of you, the senators, representatives that you work for have already spoken out on this issue, but we would love for them to speak out again, whether that's a private phone call with the undersecretary, whether that's a second letter. And there are these two processes that are happening simultaneously, right? There's the special master process, which is going to cover whether or not some of the folks that you've heard from today and some that we're not going to have time for you to hear from get debt cancellation. And I'm sure you're aware, but there was a default judgment in the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's case against Corinthian for predatory lending in the Genesis loan program, which was mentioned. These were private loans that they took out basically in order to jack up the price of tuition to accommodate the 90-10 rule. So the CFPB won that lawsuit. And so some of you have, your members have already spoken out about this and essentially said that evidence is enough to do a group process and grant relief for the special master to make that recommendation. That hasn't happened. So we certainly thank you for the work that's already been done. We would be immensely grateful for further actions because it seems like the department just isn't moving.
So I know a lot of, there's some other students here who haven't had the opportunity to share their stories, but we're running short on time. So perhaps if you haven't had the opportunity to share your story, if you could just stand up and say your name, where you attended, how much debt you have, if you feel comfortable sharing that, and then after the event, if people feel compelled to ask additional questions, and hopefully people can stay around and kind of mingle a little bit. That'll be helpful just to make sure everyone has an opportunity to tell their story at some point.
I'm Elise Zachary. I went to IT Tech from Cleveland, Ohio. My debt currently
My name is Brittany Kropp. I'm from Texas. I went to the Everest Online campus, and I am currently upwards of $80,000 in debt for a bachelor's degree that is worthless. During my time at the school, I lost my house. I went into foreclosure. The school did not care. They kicked me out of school during me losing my house. And that's just part of my story.
My name is Danielle Adorno. I went to the Art Institute of New York for the culinary program. Within a month after being enrolled, I found out the program was shutting down. We lost more than half the faculty and the students. We had no head of the culinary department for 7 months. I received no help from career services. I've never held a job in my field. My husband also went combined. We owe over $50,000 in debt, and he's never received his diploma despite the fact that he completed all the courses and graduated. And that's it.
My name is Alicia Stevens, and I attended Florida Metropolitan University before it became Everest. And I'm $33,000 in debt. I live on Social Security, and I used to be a real healthy person. I'm basically healthy now, except for the fact that all the worry and the stress over, whether they're going to garnish my Social Security at some point has me taking high blood pressure medication. And, I just live day to day in low housing on $914 a month. It's just not fair what they did to us.
I am Karen Clark, and I am a graduate of University of Phoenix. I now have a bachelor's in psychology, which the degree that they put on the paper is useless. The credit for the degree is useless. I have 5 grandkids in my household that I'm sole provider of from the ages of 4 to 15. I have a 15-year-old that's ready to go to college in a couple of years. I do not wish this on him, that he be preyed upon as I was preyed upon by these predators. I am currently over $50,000 plus in debt, and I have no clue how am I going to pay this back. My field of degree in psychology, which I'm going to go into social services, is useless. It's not transferable, and it's not accredited school. So I'm just seeking from my dad.
My name is Sanders Fabre, and my wife and I attended the Art Institute of San Diego, and originally we had $103,000 in debt. We've paid almost $100,000 to this date, and because of the high interest rates, we still have $158,000 to go, and we're supposed to pay that off in 2036, so we'll be in our mid to late 50s. And I'm here because really I don't see what other options are left to me to get anyone to listen other than to debt strike, because we've been paying basically to preserve our credit, but we're not able to save. So therefore we will never be able to get a house or a car or any of these great things that having good credit scores can afford you. So really I feel like my back's up to the wall. I've been paying in good faith for over a decade, and statute of limitations is just baloney, because I did not like my college experience, but sometimes you have bad college experiences, you work through it, you enter a down job economy, and you try to make the best. I had no idea about the levels of fraud that were being committed, that something illegal was taking place, until I heard about the Corinthians situation, and ever since then it's just been one long process of learning about this, about how deep this hole goes with corruption. And I know that my story is that I'm better off than some people, like Tanya and Pam. I'm better off, but what that means is that I'm able to not depend on the charity of others to help anymore. Basically, we have our heads above water, but we are not able to save responsibly or create a future for ourselves. And so that's why that's where I am today. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Joe. I'm a specialist in the Missouri Army National Guard. I owe $165,000 in student loan debt. I graduated from ITT Tech in Arlen, Missouri. When I first started, I wanted to go into electronics engineering, and they brought in several students from what's called their PIPE program, Partners in Education. which were several high school students that didn't know how to survive in a college environment. So I switched programs, switched gears, and went over to their software engineering program. The education was very baseless. Most of the computer equipment didn't work. Some of the students and faculty, well, a lot of the faculty quit within mid-quarter, and then one of the teachers taught an anti-evolutionary curriculum to where he just kept talking about creationism and even brought in a pastor to do an anti-evolution speech. So, yeah, he basically gave us the answers to the test, to the final exam, so we can pass the exam. So, at the end of the program, they brought me in. They said, okay, you need to file some more papers. They never really actually told me more about the financial aid process. Besides that, all these financial loans are going to be federal student loans. And turns out when I got out and looked at my student loans, I said, oh crap, I have $85,000 in student loans. No idea how I'm going to start paying this off. And I was lucky to go to a non-for-profit university to start my master's program. When I started my master's program, I got calls from my best friend, Sally Mae, saying, why are you not paying your student loans? I thought my loans were supposed to be under forbearance or deferment. Well, no, you have private student loans. They never told me anything that I had a private student loan. And now the interest on my private student loan is accumulating. Before that, I had $2,000 in private student loans. Now I have $12,000, and I have no idea how it's like ballooning in front of me. I had to pay $5,000 out of pocket to graduate. I used military state tuition assistance, and I have no idea where that money went to. It's gone, and I have no idea how I'm going to retire at the age of 65. I'm probably going to retire at 70, 75, 80. You might as well just put preservatives in me, and so I can just live to like 120. I don't know, but it keeps me up at night. I don't know how I'm going to. I don't know how I'm going to pay it off. So that's my story.
But if any can linger, hang out with staff in case folks have additional questions, please feel free to hang out and talk to me a little bit more. And if you have, I know a lot of your bosses have been really active on this issue already, but if you have any questions about how your boss can get more active, please see me or Brad or James or help committee, and we'll be happy to chat. Thank you so much for coming.
And I would love people's cards. I'm not going to put you on any distribution list. I just want to flag articles and stuff going forward. So if you're comfortable, I would love those contact info.
Yes. I'm Michael. Okay. Oh, hi. I teach 7th grade. Yeah, no, I thank you.